Why are you here?
Because I killed my wife.
Now, what's so remarkable about this shot is that it helps to clarify why consecutive viewings of Shutter Island change the experience of the film completely. You could even say that it's like you're watching a completely different film. We start off by watching a mystery thriller about US Marshal Teddy Daniels and a search for an escaped patient from the remote Ashcliff mental institution. But mostly, the story is about his search for the killer of his wife, the arsonist Andrew Ladis, who's supposedly also a patient on the island. As the story unravels, we find out that the two marshals might have become the victim of a plot by Ashcliff to silence him from revealing dark secrets about the institution. And it's only at the climax of the story that we discover the real truth.
Your name is Andrew Ladis, the 67th patient at Ashcliff. He's you, Andrew.
Now, I suspect most viewers were shocked by this plot twist, and with the evidence laid out on the table, might have thought, how did I not see this before? However, some people continue to deny Teddy's true identity, stating that Ashcliff is in fact a sort of Nazi-esque CIA lab of some kind. To clear up some of these misunderstandings, I will argue that the fourth wall mirror shot is key to comprehending the truth behind Shutter Island, and how the film manages to make audiences turn a blind eye towards reality.
Where are the kids?
It's important to note that director Martin Scorsese stated in an interview that the entire movie takes place inside of Teddy's head. Notice that there's not a single scene that doesn't depict Teddy as the focal point of the story, or even a scene without his mere presence. On top of that, the audience is constantly reminded of the tragic goodness of Andrew's made-up character.
Doesn't exactly square with Teddy Daniels, the man, the legend, I'll give you that.
Teddy's profession as a US Marshal and his role as protector of justice also give his character superiority over the seemingly untrustworthy doctors of Ashcliff. And if that wasn't enough for the audience to align with Teddy, he's also revealed to be a war hero, having liberated victims of the Holocaust from a Nazi concentration camp. And from the get-go, it is obvious what Teddy's preconceptions about the Ashcliff institution are.
Seen something like it before.
Both the framing and the dramatic, almost menacing music playing in the background add to the parallel that this facility might not be any less evil than the infamous Nazi death camps. But the real tragedy about his character is that he cannot come to terms with the death of his wife, and suffers from a massive amount of guilt for having executed a number of camp guards during the war. Teddy's really shown to be a victim rather than a perpetrator, and all of this really makes it difficult for the audience not to fully align with the protagonist, and really end up being just as delusional as the main character himself.
Andrew, please don't.
However, even during the first viewing of the film, you can already notice that Teddy's world is a little strange. Many of the characters don't really seem to act as one would expect them to in certain situations. The guards seem to be irrationally on edge as Teddy and Chuck arrive, and that's supposedly because of the escaped patient, but later are shown to be bored when Teddy launches a search party on the island. Patients are waving and looking at Teddy, but not at Chuck, and doctors and nurses are kinda laughing at Teddy's attempts to interview them.
Very impressive defense mechanisms.
Even Chuck acts out of character as he struggles to get his firearm out of his belt. It just seems like an odd thing to happen to a US Marshal, and especially for a film to put emphasis on such a subtle and arguably insignificant occurrence. And even Teddy shows irrational behavior as he starts to act on impulse and becomes increasingly violent and reckless in a search for a man who looks almost too fantastical to be real. Then there's the fact that the film has a number of continuity errors that are so obvious that they cannot possibly have been missed by the editor on accident. In one scene, a character pretends to drink water out of a non-existent glass, only for the glass to appear empty in the next shot. These jump cuts enhance the feeling that Teddy is living in a sort of dreamlike state, hence why both the character and the audience start to question the realness of the protagonist's world. However, all of this can still be explained with the argument that the entire thing is just a setup and Teddy is just being drugged and manipulated into believing that he is in fact the perpetrator himself. Now, there's really one scene, or rather one musical piece, that quite subtly manages to debunk this train of thought.
Quartet for piano and string, in A minor.
Besides the fact that the music parallels the general feeling of the scene, Quartet for Strings and Piano in A minor by Gustav Mahler remains a rather odd choice of music to say the least. We see that the music triggers a response in Teddy that brings him back to the headquarters of the Dachau concentration camp where the same music was playing on a record player. Now, why is this odd? Because Gustav Mahler was Jewish, and his music was subsequently banned by the Nazis. Secondly, the Quartet for Strings belongs to Mahler's earlier and lesser known work, so why on earth would the SS camp warden have this exact piece playing in his headquarters? It seems highly unlikely that this event actually happened, and it makes us wonder about the reality of Teddy's memories. The music adds a sort of Grimm Brothers fairy tale-like quality to the memory while snow is falling everywhere and bodies lie frozen on the ground. The thing is, real-life footage shows that there was no real snow to be seen during the liberation of the camp, adding further doubt about just how trustworthy Teddy's perspective is. A little research also reveals that Mahler actually never finished the quartet and had trouble finding his own voice, leaving it fragmented and isolated in between his work. The parallel with Andrew then seems obvious, as he struggles to find his own voice and hides behind the voice of Teddy.
We're taking the ferry back in the morning. Come on, Chuck.
And to prove that Andrew is in fact hiding behind this fake persona, we only have to look at the opening scene of the movie. After Teddy throws up, he looks into the mirror, which in film often indicates that the character has a split personality. On top of that, you can see that half of his face is illuminated by the sun, whereas the other half is left in the dark, signifying Teddy's buried real personality. He even unknowingly states his main goal of the entire story. This theme returns multiple times and comes to a climax when Andrew's face is fully illuminated and has finally accepted reality as it is. Oh, and did you notice that little band-aid on his forehead? Now that's gone here too, indicating that he's no longer covering up his wounded personality. Oh, and remember that part where Chuck is praising Teddy?
The man, the legend, I'll give you that.
Notice that the legend also explains that Teddy's personality is not real, but just a made-up story. But the most important theme of all to be found in the opening scene is the substance that both literally and figuratively keeps the scene afloat: water. So at the end of the story, it's revealed that Andrew's wife drowned her children in the lake, hence why Teddy is so nauseated by water. And like a psychological practice, Teddy is slowly but surely put in increasing contact with water, until he ultimately comes as close to his trauma as possible by diving into the sea. But Teddy's physical appearance and demeanor also change dramatically during the film. He starts his journey with a rather collected and no-nonsense attitude towards the world. But as the story progresses, he's slowly stripped from the things that make him who he is. First his gun, then his clothes, then his attitude, and ultimately his entire made-up self. As I stated earlier, Andrew came up with Teddy's persona only because he was unable to deal with the violence and guilt that he's had to endure in his life. This sort of cyclical nature of violence and cruelty that is part of humanity, and in which he actively partook, is what ultimately drove Andrew into insanity, no matter how much he denies it.
Carly thinks you're harmless, that you can be controlled, but I know different.
You don't know me.
Oh, but I do.
You don't
Oh, I know you. We've known each other for centuries.
Also notice that the sadistic warden isn't named on purpose, because warden is an anagram for Andrew. And there are more of these anagrams to be found, as is shown by Dr. Colley at the climax of the story, though he fails to explain the name of Teddy's fake partner, Chuck All, who turns out to be the mysterious Dr. Nehan.
You're gonna tell the U.S. Marshal's office that he's a defense mechanism?
Surprise, motherfucker!
Because phonetically, Chuck All sounds a lot like Chuckle, which in turn indicates his character's role as jester or trickster within the realm of story as a whole. These type of companion characters are known for their mischief and their motivation to push the protagonist into change. And not only does Chuck trick Teddy into believing that he is his partner, but he also has an active interest in helping Andrew to accept reality as it is.
This place makes me wonder.
Yeah, what's that, boss?
Which would be worse? To live as a monster? Or to die as a good man?
And to me, this is the magic and brilliance of Shutter Island. It knows its purpose in making the audience identify fully with a fake character, and arguably manages to make us just as delusional as Andrew himself. On top of that, it gives us a fascinating look into the psychology of this tragic character, trauma, and the nature of reality. It shows us just how powerful our minds can be, and the perspective really is everything. Because when we fully align with a point of view or a certain belief, we sometimes fail to see the truth, even if it's laid out right in front of our eyes.